Hey, I'm going to show you now how to make this spiced cherry brioche wreath, which is just super impressive any time of the year, but you know, it's great for Christmas in July or Christmas, the real Christmas as well. I am using guided cooking, so I've got it up here on my TM6 screen, so I'll just press start. Actually, oh, it's telling me to line a tray. I'll do that later, that's fine. I've read through the recipe and one of the ingredients is icing sugar, and I don't have icing sugar, I don't buy that. So the first thing I'm going to do while my bowl is nice and clean and dry is add in some raw sugar. And it's not a specific amount because it's to dust at the end. It's the last touch, is dusting a little icing sugar over the top. So I'm going to make the icing sugar first. So I've just put in a handful, I guess, and I am going to mill that on speed 10 for about 10 seconds. Okay, that's done. Waiting for the arms to open. So what was that, 9 seconds, and I can tell that that's nicely powdered. I'm just going to set this aside so that at the end I have some icing sugar to dust on the top. And I probably did a bit more than what I need, but that's okay. It's always fine to have leftovers. Now, in this recipe, the very first step is adding in sugar anyway for our dough. So I'm not going to bother cleaning my bowl. There's just a bit of sugar left in there. But you can see how nicely the Thermomix has milled that raw sugar into a nice powdered sugar to use at the end. So back into my recipe by pressing the bookmark. So you can go out of your recipe anytime and back into it as needed. So I'm just going to bring this forward so you can see what I'm doing. So now it's asking for sugar. I'm just using the raw sugar. What I love about the scales, they're in 1 gram increments, but it means you don't have to get out measure cups. So you can just grab your container straight out of the pantry and pour in a little bit of sugar. And now it's going to ask for the milk, which I have here. Perfect. And so in guided cooking, you just do what it says and press next. So it's asking for yeast. I don't use fresh yeast. I just use the dried instant yeast that you can get in the supermarket, and I store it in the freezer so that it stays alive, stays nice and active. Okay, it's telling me to put the lid on. So that just goes on top, just sits on. Doesn't matter where this bit ends up. Next, and I'm going to turn the dial to speed 2. Now you may notice this is set for 2 minutes on 30 to 7 degrees, speed 2. So the temperature control is really great in the Thermomix because you can do things like activating your yeast and reheating certain things, fermenting to make yogurt, tempering chocolate, cooking milk, professional sauce or custard, you know, at speed 80 or 90. Temperature 80 or 90, sorry, and up to 100 for cooking your dinners. We've got a special steaming temperature, which is called aroma, and then we have our high heat mode, which you can use for caramelization and sugar works, things like that, and really browning your meat if that's what you want to do. So I'll show you when this is done. Okay, that has finished. And so, I mean, it's not really worth showing you. There's not much to see, but it's just that the milk has been mixed in with the yeast and it was all bubbling up nicely. It smells very yeastish. Oh, it tells me to scrape down the sides. There isn't really much to scrape. Sometimes the recipes are being cautious with that. So now we're adding in some butter, which you can make in your Thermomix if you wish to. Just using cream, a teaspoon of salt. So I just use, I buy Himalayan rock salt. Sorry, this is a half teaspoon. That's why I'm doing it twice. I buy Himalayan rock salt and then I mill it myself in the Thermomix to make a powdered cooking salt. So that's something else you can do in your Thermomix. And I've got 650 grams of baker's flour here that I weighed out a minute ago. Hopefully it's right. Oh, yep, good. Baker's flour, if you don't have baker's flour, you can use plain flour to make breads. You will have a different result. The baker's flour has more protein, more gluten. It's a bit stronger, better for a bread rather than a cake, which you would use normal plain flour for. But if plain's all you have, still do your baking because it's still going to be pretty good. Okay, an egg going in. And now the lid goes on. So it's asking me to mix on speed 7 for 10 seconds. Just doing that initial combine, and then I'll show you the dough mode, which will knead the dough for us. So it's asking me to scrape down and then put the lid back on, and you can see the symbol there for the dough mode. Just gonna get anything that came up onto the lid back in there. There isn't really, you don't need to scrape it too much because the dough mode is going to gather, the dough mode will gather everything in it anyway. So this dough is going to knead for 3 minutes. Whenever the dough uses milk or yogurt like naan, a sweet kind of brioche or hot cross bun type dough, it usually asks for 3 minutes of kneading, whereas your basic dough that is for pizza or bread or focaccia, you only need to knead that for 2 minutes, which is the same as 20 minutes of hand kneading. So it definitely saves a lot of time. And I'll show you what it looks like after it's been kneaded for 3 minutes. I decided to show you what it looks like while it's kneading because it's pretty cool. The dough makes the speed go, it's around speed 3, but it's more of a stronger push, and you can see it's going backwards and stopping and then forwards and stopping, and it's a pretty cool function of the dough mode. Okay, so that is ready. I am going to, oh, I better follow the instructions. So it's saying to transfer into a bowl. I'm going to use my mat. This is the Thermo mat that you can get from the mix shop. It's also one of our host rewards. The dough is nicely kneaded. I'm going to flip that upside down and use the base of the blades to twist and get that dough out of the bowl, and it should all just fall out. So it's done a pretty good job. There's just a little bit in there I am going to grab. Better if I can see it. Just, I mean, obviously be careful when you're putting your hand in there because the blades are fairly sharp, but so that's not a job for a child to do, putting your hand in, but usually the dough just comes out. But you can see here this beautiful sweet dough texture. I'm just going to roll it into kind of a ball shape. It doesn't matter too much what you do here because we're just going to set it aside to rise, and after about an hour it will be ready to shape. In the meantime, I'm going to put some cold water in my bowl and whiz that around on speed 10 for a few seconds, and that will help clean all the dough out of my bowl. And as far as wrapping in my mat goes, you could put it in a bowl as the recipe said. I find the mat rises doughs really nicely because of that silicone, and on the inside of the silicone is fiberglass, which is going to trap in the heat of the dough. Remember, we heated up the milk to 37 degrees, so it's already a nice warm temperature in the dough, and the mat just traps in that heat, so it rises really nicely in there. So we will come back in an hour. Okay, I am back, and this dough has been rising. I don't know if you can tell, it's about to pop out of the mat, and I'm just going to carry on with what the recipe is telling me to do. So now it's asking me to add this mix. I've already got it ready here. So you can see what I have. I've got the sugar. So it's asking for sugar, nutmeg, cardamom, cinnamon, star anise, and cloves. So, and then it's telling me to put the lid on. So I will just put all that in. Okay. Pop the lid on. And it's 20 seconds on speed 9. So obviously need that 20 seconds to do the cinnamon quills. If it's not all the way done after that, I will just do it longer, which is fine. So we'll do that. Okay, that's been 20 seconds, and I'll just show you what it looks like and see if we need to do longer. No, that, oh my goodness, that smells so good. And that looks perfect. So transfer 3 tablespoons into a small bowl. I'm just going to grab another small bowl because I forgot about that. So this is to sprinkle on at the end. So setting aside 3 tablespoons. How good does that look? Perfect. And then we want to transfer this into another bowl. I've just got a little bowl. It's the same bowl I had it in. So to make sure I don't spill any, I'm going to use my lid. I just took out the measure cup. I'm going to use my lid as a funnel to pour it all in there. So I don't make a mess all over the bench, which I'm always likely to do. I'm just scraping down the sides of my bowl with my spatula. Okay, I don't want to waste any of this. It's so good. I should mention as well, the recipe asks for 130 grams of sugar. I did reduce that a bit. I often reduce sugar when I know it's just my family eating it. If I was making this to take out, I probably wouldn't worry as much. So there we have that, which we're going to use in a second. Preheat oven. I just did that before I pressed to record again. Okay, here's where we're going to set the Thermomix aside. And it's telling me to get my silicone bread mat ready, or my whatever work surface you're using. And we are going to shape this into a ball. It looks so good, and it's so soft. What a great dough. You can see the silicone mat here is nice and non-stick, so it's very easy to work with. So I'm going to divide this into 2 equal portions. One thing to know with your Thermomat is not to cut on it. You don't want the silicone to be tearing, so I'm going to use my spatula to cut that. If you wanted it to be perfect, you could weigh each portion on the scales, on the Thermomix, obviously. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and feel with my hands. I think that's pretty good. So we're going to roll each portion out into a long rectangle, and it says, I don't know if you can see on the screen, it says 50 by 20. Now on this Thermomat we have a ruler here, so I can see 50. I'm just going to get my rolling pin, sorry. Forgot to have that ready. So yeah, this is probably a little bit boring to watch, but, and I don't often work with pastries, or I do a lot of scrolls, but because it's just for my family, I've never really made sure it looks perfect in any way. So I wouldn't be any more practiced at this than any of you. So if you can see that I'm doing it well, I would say that you can do it too. Give it a go. But I think once you've seen someone do it, you're more confident to be able to do it yourself. So that's my aim today, is for all of you to try something fancy like this and see how you go with it. So I have rulers up the side. I want it to be about 20. So I'm going to try and get this a bit more wider, but it's already 50 centimeters long. So I just want it to be a little bit wider. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm just going to do that to the other side. I find it easier if I just pull it with my hands a bit first. And the mat is 40 long, so I need to fill up the rest of this space quite well. Thermomix is a little bit in the way. And yeah, don't stress about making it too perfect, because once it's all rolled into the wreath, you won't notice too much. So yeah, it's looking good. You can see now that I've done this one a little bit bigger. And because I've got an audience, I'm trying to be faster. So if you're a perfectionist, just take your time, obviously. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'd say that that's good enough. I've got my two rough kind of rectangles here. Great. So now it's telling me to divide the larger portion of the reserved spice mix evenly between the two rectangles of dough. So I've got this, and it's the picture there is handy as well. I don't know, could you see that? There's a picture here showing me exactly what it wants me to do, which is good. So this spice mix is going all along. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. And try and get it evenly without stressing too much. This is the type of spice mix you could make and just put in things as well. Like if you're making muffins or cakes or custard, even if you wanted to make a kind of festive flavored custard. Okay, and now it's asking me for our cranberries, which I already weighed. So I've just got dried cranberries. I always keep these in the cupboard. We love them. Actually, most of the time when a recipe asks for sultanas, we all prefer cranberries, so I usually sub it out for cranberries, but especially at Christmas or Easter, it's really nice to make hot cross buns with, or you know, Christmas time, things like this. That's looking pretty good. And then it's going to ask for the cherries. Now the cherries, even in summer, sometimes I still buy these jar cherries. I just kept the jar to show you. It's in the fruit section at the supermarket. I get the pitted Morello cherries. You can use fresh if that's what you have, but even when they are in season, I do find these a lot easier to cook with, obviously, because you don't have to take out the stems or the pits. So we kind of save the fresh cherries just for us to eat in this type of thing, because you're baking it anyway. I don't find fresh to have that much more of a benefit than buying the jarred ones. So personal preference, I would say. And I'm just making sure I'm doing this a little bit evenly so that each bite gets a cherry or two. I think you can agree with me that's looking pretty yummy. Okay, next is our flaked almonds, just from the baking aisle where all the other baking kind of nuts are. And these just go over the top. And if you have an allergy to nuts or don't want the crunch in there, like if you just are after a different kind of flavor, you can just leave the nuts out and it's still going to be really good. But I really love the flavor that these flaked almonds put in there. I think it adds a really nice dimension. So now it's telling me, and again, there's a really handy picture here. Use your hands to gently roll the rectangle of dough into a long sausage shape to enclose the filling. So just peeling it off the mat and gently rolling. So that was pretty easy. All these things seem fiddly and they look like they might be challenging until you actually give it a go, and then you realize, oh, that was actually easy. Okay, so I have my two sausage shapes here, and then the next step is to fold, and again there's a nice picture showing you how to do it. It's just twisting them together. So I'm going to roll this over so that they're next door to each other. Along the way I've had one of the cherries fall out, so I'm just going to pop that back in. I think it would have been easier if I sealed off the ends first before I rolled them. It's not that big of a deal though. Okay, sealing those ends there. And I am going to start crossing them over, just twisting them really. This is probably the part that might need some practice, but I am happy with that. Looks very pretty. And so now we have a little plait and we're going to bring it together. You can kind of twist it more as you bring it around if you want. And now I have my wreath. So I've got I'm using a pizza tray. You could just put this on a rectangle tray, but since it was going to be round, I decided for the pizza tray. And you can see my very well-loved oven baking mat. I use that all the time. So I'm just going to transfer the wreath over there, which shouldn't be too hard. It's a really nice non-stick dough to work with, actually. I am a little bit conscious that where my joins meet isn't very pretty. But once it's baked and risen, I think it will still be, I think that will be okay. I think it looks quite good, actually. Rotate it so you can see. Yeah, it's kind of pretty. So now I am going to brush with melted butter and some extra cherries and almonds. Yeah, just making sure I'm following the recipe correctly. Cherries, almonds. Okay, I haven't organize my melted butter yet, so I'm going to go get some butter and melt it. Okay, I've just melted my butter, and I'm just going to brush that over the top. And this is going to help the topping stick on it, but it's also going to help brown it up so it's nice and golden. Should probably lift that up to make it easier. Okay. Lovely, very nice. And so now it's saying top with some extra cherries, which you can just place strategically around wherever you desire. You could probably poke them in to the dough if you wanted them to definitely stay right where you need them. But yeah, it doesn't matter, obviously. Just a bit of nice decoration. Where am I going to put this? Okay. It's probably good. Another one over here. Kind of folding it in the dough a bit. Yeah. Might be overthinking that a little. Anyway, that looks good. And I will get some of these almonds. And they look very pretty on top. That kind of also helps hide the joint where I had the two ends meeting. Now the last step is to dust with, remember we set aside 3 tablespoons of the spice mixture. So I'm just going to dust with that. There we go. Just using a sieve. If you don't have anything like this, well, hopefully you do. Most people do, I guess. You can use a simmer basket, I guess, of your Thermomix, but or just be really careful. Just sprinkle with your fingers carefully. It is starting to work its way into the melted butter, but if I just keep going around, it's getting a beautiful coating everywhere. So pretty and smells delicious. And okay, I think that's enough on there, but I've still got some mixture. I'm just going to stop there though, because I'm like, this is looking great. So now we bake it for half an hour until the brioche is golden. I will show you that step when it's done. Okay, I've just taken this out of the oven. It has been exactly half an hour and it's looking beautiful all the way around. Nice and brown. It smells really good. The next step is to let it cool, and we're going to, I mean, it looks great just the way it is, but after it's cooled down, we are actually going to top it with further little extras. So see you soon once it's cool. Okay, we have here our cooled brioche wreath, which is looking so beautiful. And I've just put it on my plate that I'm wanting to serve it on. And the last step is to garnish with extra cranberries. So I'm just sprinkling them around. They're not necessarily staying on, actually. Just to make it look a bit pretty. If you were taking this somewhere, I would take the extra garnish in a container and do it when you get there, because otherwise it's just balancing precariously on there, really. It's just for looks. So that's good. And the extra cherries. So here is where we've got the mixture of the baked cherries and then some of the fresh cherries. If you had real fresh cherries, here's where they would look particularly pretty. Just kind of putting them around. Even if they fall off, they're still going to look pretty on the plate, so don't worry about that. Yeah, it's looking very, very festive. And you could always have some extra so that once you cut it up, you could put extra on each person's serving. Whatever works. But I think it's really looking beautiful, and it smells so good. Yeah, really, really happy with that. And the last step is to dust it with some icing sugar. And remember that I made some icing sugar earlier. This they say to do just before you're serving, and I can imagine why, because the icing sugar would start to dissolve in, but makes a pretty little coating that looks like snow, similar to if you're making a gingerbread house. You could do this at the end. And there we have it. So I want to hold it up without everything falling off. I'm sure you get the idea. I'm going to hold that down a bit. Lost a cherry just there. But there is our spiced cherry brioche wreath, ready to serve and looking beautiful. And I will cut into it. I'll stop the recording now, and when the class is live, I'll cut into it.